We tend to view American elections as these massive, sweeping national referendums, a collective thumbs up or thumbs down on the economy, on leadership, right? Well, when you look under the hood at the 2026 midterms, that illusion shatters pretty quickly. The fight for congressional control isn't really a battle of national sentiment. It's a precise, highly structural game of arithmetic. Throughout this explainer, we're mapping out the mechanics of this political landscape, the institutional advantages, the electoral psychology, and the raw math actually governing who holds power.
In 2026, it's not just about who has the better message, it's about who has the better map. Right now, voter frustration is incredibly deep. We're all feeling the squeeze of inflation, high energy costs, those regional economic divides. But because of how congressional districts are drawn and the actual geography of the seats up for grabs, that widespread anger might not actually translate into a shift in power. You can have all the political momentum in the world, but if the structural map doesn't let that momentum land, the balance of power just stays static.
Section 1. The Redistricting Firewall. Looking at House Dynamics. The House of Representatives is where this disconnect is literally drawn onto the map, acting as a built-in institutional buffer.
Just look at the numbers. 10 to 12. That is the estimated seat advantage Republicans locked in before a single campaign ad even aired. Because of the Supreme Court's Calais ruling, a wave of mid-decade redistricting let several southern states completely redraw their maps. Texas alone engineered a 5-seat flip. Florida targets 4. Ohio adds 2. Mapmakers have essentially built a 10 to 12-seat structural edge just by moving the lines.
So we have two massive opposing forces colliding. On one side, the wave. Democrats hold roughly a 5.7% lead on the generic ballot, driven by very real voter anger over things like $4.50 gas. On the other side, the wall, that 10 to 12-seat Republican map advantage. For Democrats to actually win the House gavel, they don't just need a win. They need an electoral wave strong enough to wash entirely over a mathematically fortified wall. But that Republican firewall does have a structural crack in it. It's called a dummy mender. When mapmakers get a little too greedy, say splitting up opposition strongholds to create several districts that only lean their way by 5 or 6 points, they spread their voters incredibly thin. In a normal political year, it works perfectly. But if economic anxiety pushes the national mood far enough, those thinly stretched lines can just snap, leaving incumbents suddenly and wildly exposed.
Section 2, the math and the vacuum. Let's pivot to the Senate dynamics, which operates under totally different rules. You can't redraw state borders, obviously. So the Senate is governed by some highly volatile, rigid math.
Right now, Republicans hold a 53 to 47 split. And the arithmetic is cold. The GOP only needs to hold 51 seats to keep the majority. Democrats, on the other hand, are staring down a remarkably narrow path. They need a net gain of 4 seats. They have to perfectly defend their vulnerable seats in states Donald Trump won in 2024, while somehow flipping deep red states just to hit that magic number of 51. But that math gets even more chaotic because of a historic vacuum. 11 senators are retiring, 4 Democrats, 7 Republicans. That is the highest chamber turnover we've seen since 2012. Think about what that does. It completely strips away the incumbency advantage. Long-serving senators usually have a personal brand that shields them from national waves. Without that armor, previously stable states are completely thrown into chaos, forcing both parties to burn millions on untested candidate recruitment. For Democrats, this creates a brutal defense-first trap. They have to sink massive resources into protecting a vulnerable incumbent like Jon Ossoff in Georgia, or navigating the open primary in Michigan, all while trying to scrape together enough cash for expensive pickup targets like North Carolina or Ohio to have any shot at the majority. It's incredibly tough to build offensive momentum when your bank account is draining just to hold the ground you're already standing on. Section 3. The wild cards. Overriding national partisanship. Structures aren't destiny, right? Let's look at the specific states where unique candidate profiles and electoral mechanics are actively breaking the expected math. Take Ohio. We've got a special election to fill J.D. Vance's old seat. Structurally, in a state trending heavily conservative, this was a likely Republican hold. A done deal. But the second former Senator Sherrod Brown announced his bid to return to the chamber, the entire race reset to a toss-up. It's a perfect example of how a highly recognizable, trusted working-class profile can completely bypass a state's expected partisan tilt.
Down in Texas, the threat to the Republican structure isn't actually coming from Democrats. It's coming from inside the House. Incumbent John Cornyn is fighting a bitter May runoff against Attorney General Ken Paxton. Paxton is actually leading 48 to 45% among likely runoff voters. This intra-party war over border security and party direction is just burning through Republican campaign cash and fracturing their base. That kind of internal friction creates a probabilistic window for a challenger like Democrat James Tallarico in a state that normally wouldn't even be on the board.
System mechanics matter too. Look at Alaska. Democrat Mary Peltola is challenging incumbent Dan Sullivan. Because Alaska uses ranked choice voting, the system actively rewards cross-party appeal over deep partisan loyalty. By running on a highly localized platform of fish, family, and freedom, Peltola effectively neutralizes the nationalized talking points. Early ranked choice simulations show what should be a safe Republican seat in a statistical dead heat.
We're seeing a similar defensive pressure test in Florida. Republican incumbent Ashley Moody faces Democrat Alex Vindman in a special election. Moody's leading the polls, hovering around 49 or 50%, sure. But Vindman's massive fundraising, centered around affordability and institutional integrity, is forcing the GOP to spend heavily to defend a state they usually consider perfectly safe. It's a strategic tax. Every dollar they spend defending Florida is a dollar they can't use to flip a seat in Michigan or Nevada.
Section 4. Momentum versus structure. Let's pull back and reconcile these state-level battles with the macroeconomic pressures hanging over the entire country.
When you track the actual campaign ad spending, the top issues are completely grounded in economic reality. Healthcare, taxation, inflation. Voters are reacting directly to global oil instability driving up gas prices and a fractured labor market. This is the organic, undeniable momentum of the electorate. People are feeling the economic pain, and they naturally want to use their vote to force a correction.
This collision creates the ultimate unresolved tension of 2026. We are looking at two totally opposite but highly realistic scenarios. Scenario A is sentiment-driven. The economic anxiety becomes so overwhelming that it shatters those thin, dummy-mandered margins in the House and pushes challengers over the edge in tight Senate races. Or Scenario B, which is structure-driven. The redistricting firewall holds firm, and the Senate's mathematically hostile map simply absorbs and blocks out the national momentum. It's a really profound institutional reality. From House redistricting math to the geography of Senate retirements to the mechanics of party primaries, the direction of our legislature is heavily shaped long before anyone ever steps into a voting booth. So as these midterms play out, ask yourself, when a massive wave of voter sentiment hits a perfectly engineered mathematical wall, which one breaks first?
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, so why not invest in this channel? Click like and subscribe for more.